Welcome to the I Ching Cafe. My name is Belinda Dowston, and it is fantastic that you are here, that you are with me, whether you're on the podcast or the YouTube version, that we are connecting today and we are looking ahead at the week ahead for the week commencing the 19th of September 2022. What is the I Ching asking us to focus on this week? What is the path that we could all put some energy into that would help us accelerate our growth in our businesses and in our lives the fastest and in the best way possible? Sounds like a good deal. Good. So stay with me as we unpack the week. So last week we had amassing Hexagram 45. We had this whole kind of little trickiness around the group we're wanting to be a part of and finding someone who could help us introduce ourselves to the group. We had recognizing our role central to the group, central to the crowd that can rally and support us. And we had Hexagram 62, attention to details, calling us to put our nose down to the ground and deal with the details one by one by one. What happened for you last week? What insight in your life connected to those two hexagrams became apparent? Would love it if you could share. Okay, so this week, this is a very interesting week. Okay, you know, they're always interesting. All right, every week, every combination, every changing line, every hexagram, always interesting. This week, there are two hexagrams that fit together like a pattern. Okay, and if we don't pay attention to the story these two hexagrams are going to give us, then we have to pay the price and we have to deal with the consequences. So we'll start off with the first hexagram for this week, and then we'll get into the outcome hexagram or the second relating flow in a few minutes. First up for this week, our main area of attention that we need to focus on is hexagram 60, limitation. Okay, limitation is a hexagram we've had loads of times before, maybe because we were going through this huge growth spurt and there's lots of creative energy flowing, and sometimes we just need to kind of be reined in a little bit and put some boundaries in place. This is the symbol of the dam wall, okay? And the limitation is the dam wall and all the kind of control mechanisms that we put in place to control the flow of water. Human beings who are monitoring, technology that is organizing and opening and closing sluice gates, all right, to make sure that the dam does not overflow, because the structure of the hexagram is water pouring into a full lake. All right, treacherous. So this week comes to bring us a way of working with limitation. And not just limitation in terms of boundaries, you know, in terms of putting the dam wall up, right, and putting in place the controls. That is a very important part of that process. But also to think about this idea of limitation as breaking things down into pieces, articulating the challenge or articulating the journey into chapters, into bars of music, into pieces of a model, into, you know, like getting them broken down into more digestible chunks that we can work with and we can manage and we can put through a process in a much more effective way. So we're being asked to focus this week on putting in place some healthy boundaries, with a caveat not to be overly controlling and hardcore about those boundaries, because very strict, austere measures, okay, tend to eventually have negative consequences. Even if there are things we put on ourselves, we will rebel against our own rules. So in your teams, in your businesses, this is a week where we manage the flow, where we are dialed into where we are needing some controls, right? Some control mechanisms, some accountability, some responsibility, is looking at our teams, look within the way that we work and find ways of putting those controls in place, of breaking the problem down into smaller pieces, of finding ways of putting checks and balances in place, the metrics of measurement in place, that we can make sure that we don't get overwhelmed with the flow coming down the river. Okay, that is our task. We've got to manage and control our flow. All right. So wherever we have let go of controlling a particular area, I would assume that that's going to be where things pop up for us to pay attention to, or where our mind dials into this idea of limitation. Okay, not too hardcore, But let's get stuck in there and let's manage and put in place some healthy boundaries. Okay. What's always interesting to me is this idea that we talk about creativity and innovation as being out of the box thinking, all right? Get outside the limits of your old ways, all right? And actually, innovation often manifests in a world of constraint, to say these are the constraints of the system, of the process, of the products. What can we do differently within these constraints? And that's real innovation, because sometimes, thinking outside the box is kind of counterproductive, okay, because the box is our reality. It's the sandbox and it's the walls that we have. So let us be innovative within the constraints we have. And that might be a process that you can work with for this week with this hexagram. Now, 2 changing lines, the same as we had for last week in the 1st and the 4th position. Okay, so let's see what these pops of change are all about. Our first changing line in the 1st position, this one says, the way to put in place limitation, and you're going to love this, is do not leave your house. Do not leave the front door. Do not go outside. Limitation is the ultimate limitation. Okay, this is lockdown. All right. So symbolically, what it means is it means the way that we manage the flow and manage some of the challenges is we stay at home. Symbolically, stay where we are. We don't go out on big adventures. We don't push out. We don't start new things. We just stay where we are, stay indoors, stay under cover, be out of sight, okay? You've got to try and apply this to what this means for you in your personal life and in your business as well. Stay indoors, stay under cover, stay out of sight, under the radar, just let the storm blow over, okay? This is the kind of ultimate limitation as we start off the journey. The journey's only just begun. We deal with it by not doing anything, okay? All right, and it's just really managing our exposure and talking about the story of not going outside the house, which is pushing outside of the home base, outside of what we know, outside of the comfort zone. So yes, we have some permission from the I Ching to stay in the comfort zone, at least as we start off the week. And then our next changing line, our last one for this week in the 4th position, draws our attention to the kinds of limitations, boundary managements we are putting in place. Okay. Our goal here is to have natural limitations, things that are easy to implement, that make sense, that create flow and are just there like a hand in glove that just fit naturally, as opposed to unnatural forced limitations, which require masses of energy to implement. So an example of a natural limitation would be to take a river that's coming down, okay, a valley, and to put some kind of walls in place to direct some of the water off to a particular side stream, okay, if you wanted to build a little dam there. Okay, so you're using the energy of the water coming down, the kinetic energy and the gravity, and you're redirecting some of that energy off into a side stream. Natural, okay? The water, all it has to do is be water. It doesn't have to be anything else, okay? Now what we're doing is we're saying, okay, this water, what I want you to do is when you get to this point, I want you to levitate, go up, all right? Go in the air and then go upwards and back up the hill, okay? And so what that means is that there's so much energy that has to be put into that, so much structure and infrastructure that has to get the water to behave in that fashion, okay? It's not aligned with the natural flow of water. And so all the energy we need to put in place to maintain that limitation, that structure that we're wanting to have, that kind of boundary we're wanting to put in place doesn't make any sense. And all it does is wear us out. So sometime this week, I affirm for you, if this is your thing to work with this week, is that it'll become obvious where maybe we're trying to create a control that doesn't make sense. It's like you've got a team of people who are people, right? They deliver value because they are connecting with others and they're building relationships. And your measure of their daily performance you put in place is a numbers measure of how many orders they have captured correctly on your back-end system. Can you see how there's a disconnect there? Because you want people to be out building relationships. That's what we should be measuring. That's the control we should be putting in place. Now we're putting controls around paperwork that they should be doing, which is not natural. It requires huge amounts of energy to get them to follow the system, for them to follow the system, and it just doesn't work. Why do it that way? So that's just an example of us just tuning into where are some of the controls and things we require of people around us. Where are the personal boundaries we are putting up in our personal relationships, if it's not a business thing, that are unnatural, okay, and are therefore so exhausting to manage because they require all that energy, all right? They're not in flow, all right? And when they're not in flow, someone's got to put in the energy to keep them out of flow. Okay, so our second hexagram. Now we've got this limitation, and we've got don't leave the house, and we've got relook at how we are limiting and putting in place boundaries. Well, our second hexagram is 47, exhaustion, all right? The structure of the hexagram, on the top we have lake, and water is below lake. So this is like an image of the water table having dropped below the level of the lake, and therefore the lake bed is dry. Okay. This hexagram is not telling you that you've done something wrong. And I'd like to think that none of them have brought that across, and hopefully I don't convey that. There's things where we are out of alignment with principle and we have to learn how to be the superior person. And each hexagram and each changing line brings us the opportunity of choosing the path of the superior person, right? Or the master. This hexagram says it's not your fault that there's this period of exhaustion, but we have to learn how to deal with it. So exhaustion for you this week could be physical exhaustion. You might just be shattered, okay? Or there might be financial exhaustion. Your bank account may be completely emptied out or depleted, or there's a big payment you've had to do and suddenly, whoa, you just look at what's left. And so it's that kind of thing of just feeling like sucked dry. So energy exhaustion, time exhaustion, just not having enough time, physical exhaustion, money exhaustion. And what this says to us is it's not so much that there's exhaustion, and it's just a weekly one, okay? So it's overs in a flash. This is saying it's how we deal with the exhaustion. Do we take time out? Do we rest? Do we just make peace that there are some processes that we cannot control? Do we trust? Okay, it's okay, hand it over. The flow will come back up. And this says, yes, the flow will come back. The water table will come back up. But for now, it's not. So what do we do about that? Do we use the opportunity to rest? So wherever you can, make peace with feeling exhausted, feeling oppressed and cut off and just out of sorts. Just make peace with it. It's not permanent and it will go away. Okay, and I have a suspicion it'll be gone and it'll be out of our life the week afterwards. So just hang in there and take time out. Thank you so much. Please like, share, and subscribe. I'll see you again back here, whether that's podcast or YouTube version. Really, really appreciate you being here with me. I'll see you on the socials, which also includes TikTok if you're on TikTok. And I will see you very soon at our next weekly overview.